Welcome to the Inspired Hive podcast, where we connect ambitious entrepreneurs, leaders, and change makers with the ideas and inspiration to elevate their leadership, business, and life. I'm your host, Margo. Each week, we dive into powerful conversations on leadership, personal growth, and how to thrive along the journey. Today, I am absolutely thrilled to be chatting with someone you all have experienced the work of, even if you're new here. Behind every success is a team contributing amazing talents and creative juices to bring a product to life. It's my absolute pleasure and honor to have Lindsay Moore on the Inspired Hive podcast today. Lindsay is the Chief Experience Officer and Consultant of Lindsay Jo Co, which she launched in 2019. She is a multi-talented, multi-passionate creator who fills the gaps for organizations and individuals needing graphics, editing, event planning, and everything in between. Lindsay is the epitome of executive support, rising far above a Girl Friday status to queen of get her done. With a professional background in athletic training, she understands what it takes to drive a team forward, score the game-winning goal, and finish a season in championship style. She has married her love of travel with her multi-talented work from anywhere, show up when needed approach to embark on a true business adventure on the road. She has taught me about leverage and how you cannot just grow your own business, but how it can serve to inspire others to step into their next levels as well. When we began our journey together, she encouraged me to think about what can Lindsay do for me? After these 6.5 years of working together, I am absolutely convinced the answer is anything she dreams of. Lindsay, welcome to the Inspired Hive podcast.
That was an amazing intro. I'd like to be a Girl Friday, you know.
You are the epitome beyond that of like, what can you not do, really?
6.5 years hearing that out loud it's pretty impressive. It's pretty amazing. It's been a fun ride.
It has, and we have really journeyed so much together. I remember when we first started, I had reached out because I was feeling overwhelmed and there were too many spinning plates and thinking maybe it's time to have somebody help me with whatever these things are, to bring more to the table, to bring more to what I can show up in my business world. And I remember reaching out and you were like, "Hey, let's meet, let's chat." And I think it just grew from there.
I think so too. And man, how many regrowths have we also had? Like
Right.
any idea you came up with, we tackled together. It was a lot of fun from the beginning to, ooh, what about this? Or ooh, what about that? So
Yeah.
yes.
What I so appreciate is there's a lot of wacky ideas that we've talked about that I've said, "What do you think about this?" And we have these candid conversations about them, and they might not even be things either of us know how to do, but somehow we've brought things to life, like the Inspired Hive podcast. I mean, without you editing, helping with the process, navigating the how to bring that out to people, it would not be here. It wouldn't be what it is today.
Well, and I think that's part of it, knowing, I didn't know how to do this. And I was very upfront about that at the beginning of, I'm sure I can figure it out, because I definitely live by, the let me do some research and see what I can find out. And if I can figure out how to do it, great. If not, I can find somebody who can. And I've told you that, a couple times that, and we've looked to find, different editors and things like that. But I think it's more about knowing the client, knowing you, right? And knowing what you want as the outcome, and what you're really trying to do across the board with IHP. So I love, you know, you coming and saying, "Hey, I have this idea." And those conversations you mentioned just being, okay, well, what would we need to get that accomplished? And where do they all fit in of what's step one to get to that final product? And we fill in the steps along the way. And sometimes we finish them, sometimes we're like, maybe not, let's put this one on pause. But it gives us an idea of if X is where, we're wanting to finish, what it takes to get there. And it's just the process is something that I love doing. Like if you've got the idea, I can figure out how to get it done. And whether we want to tackle that or not is, up to you.
And I think you bring up some really important things. Like you said, it's about knowing your client. And I think on the flip side, for me, it's about knowing you and knowing how we've worked together and knowing that I can trust that. And I think that's a piece that a lot of business owners don't appreciate or understand how to cultivate and how to grow that. And I was definitely the kind of person who's like, it's easier to do it myself and do it the way I want. And, you know, that gets you so far, but it doesn't get you to all the places that you want to go and want to grow. And I think finding ways of working with others to bring their skills and talents and or just project management, that's a big piece, I think, of the systems that you introduced to me, whether it was personal stuff that we were organizing or working on, or whether it was business things that you really taught me that there are other ways that I can leverage my time if I can trust a process and a system that you can create, that you can put in place. And it's just so neat to see how much that can build for both of us.
Well, we've done that a couple times. I think we've tried a few different things too. We started with Trello, and we started with, some
Mhm.
Google documents and things and whatever. But I am a huge fan of Airtable. I always have been, and I can set it up for you and it can work great. The key there is if it doesn't work for you, it doesn't work. It doesn't matter if
Yeah.
it works for me. It doesn't matter if it works for, big name whoever you follow or somebody who even recommended a different one to you. If it doesn't work for you, it doesn't work. And you have to find something that does because everybody's brain processes things differently. So finding the one that you can gel with and that makes sense. And inside of Airtable, we've done a few different iterations of what works and what
Yeah.
we're working on, and then changing it up to reflect our new direction or the new piece we're adding in. So it doesn't just have to be a one size fits all thing because it doesn't. And it doesn't have to stay with something all the time just because it works now.
You bring up some really good points. And I think another big piece of that is recognizing how important communication is. And what we're talking about in terms of the organization or the project management is also a form of communication that is working in the background, that is places that I can put content and that I can put ideas, and then that you can take and create and run from a visual side or a focus side. And I think that is one area in any team and any organization. If that communication or process isn't there, that things start to break down and things start to become more complex or become less efficient in terms of the growth and the process to getting to accomplish the goals that they're setting out. You have so many different aspects and skill sets that you bring to the work that you do. And I am just so curious where your story began with this.
Like you mentioned, I was an athletic trainer for about a decade. From there, I went into personal training with a love of Olympic lifting. And after that, it kind of got to be a couple different places where each one of these, I was continuing to grow as a person, and my job wasn't allowing me to have the growth I wanted
Mm.
or the setting around me wasn't conducive for that growth. So I decided to leave my position in personal training, actually working in Utah. And I moved home to Oklahoma to kind of start figuring out what the next step was. It happens to be I moved in with my parents just to figure out, was I going to stay in Oklahoma City, Tulsa? Was I going to go try and find a different spot? And that was all in the fall of 2019. Of course, I still had bills and things I needed to pay. So I started working online. There was a lot of kind of just happened. I had some friends reach out needing some help with stuff. And I was like, oh, I could totally do this, this, and this. And it kind of just grew itself. I got really lucky right there being able to kind of supplement what I didn't know what I wanted to do. Fast forward to spring of 2020, but everybody knows, COVID came in and everybody pivoted, everybody shifted. And the whole world basically went online at that point. So it really kind of helped me already having some knowledge of these things and then getting into just more of what I could do and that I didn't know I could do. But it all comes from, kind of how I was brought up. I can figure it out. And whether or not I like it is up to me, like if I want to keep with it or try something else, never giving up, never stopping, just continuing to, again, pivot. And so it did. It started out with a lot of virtual assistant work that I was like, well, I can do this. I just don't love it. From my two previous careers, I had a lot of organizational structure that I didn't realize not a lot of people had. Organizing email inboxes and Google Drives and file folders and like things like that that you need on a daily basis. I didn't know that was a skill that was needed until I found out like
Nice.
not a lot of people had it. Until yeah. So it was one of those things where you start something and you keep going with it and then all of a sudden you find out, oh, it's maybe not a normal thing that everybody knows how to do. So I started running with it. And just even organizational structure, like you say, that project management option where somebody has the idea and they don't know how to get it to complete. I can figure those steps out and put you a roadmap together of what you need. So that's where it started. And I just am lucky enough. I think I'm incredibly blessed that word of mouth kept happening. And slowly I continued to, figure out what is a price point, what's a package, how do I sell this to people other than just, oh, someone told me about you, or oh, I talked to so and so, and it kind of grew on its own. It was kind of weird and strange, not how you would expect a business plan to work, but that's on par for me.
Well, what I love so much about your story, there's so many nuggets in this. One was you left something behind in order to grow. And that's such a big lesson that so many people are afraid to leave things behind to allow them to shed a layer and grow into that next level of potential.
That's
And yet
scary. It really is.
it is. And yet it's so key for our growth, right? How we are, where we're growing to really requires us to let other things be, let other things go sometimes, or just let other things kind of percolate elsewhere. And we move to what we need to be our next best self. And I think too many people get stuck in that comfort of what's here versus seeing the potential of what can be. The other thing I think is really curious about what you're saying is you grew a virtual business from word of mouth, which oftentimes people think virtual business, it's all social media, it's all, gotta be in people's, spotlight on their reels, whatever. And truth be told, a lot of how our businesses grow is through our network, word of mouth, the people we know, the things we've done, the kind of who knows who, because that's who we trust, right? And so I think a really powerful example of when you let yourself move to that next level, how cool it is that people find you, people promote you, and you continue to have that scale and growth.
I think that's so true. Letting go of what you know and stepping out into the unknown is probably one of the scariest things um, I have ever done. I think for anybody, letting go of that comfort to find the growth and to know something's not for you any longer, and then to go ahead and make the move, right? You might feel it's not for you anymore, but making that move and getting that next step, it takes a lot. And I was unhappy enough. It's not all about, it's not always about just being happy, but
Mhm.
there is a large portion of it that for me, I couldn't stay there anymore. And so if I couldn't keep growing, the only thing, because I don't believe anything ever stays stagnant, you're actually going to start decreasing your quality of life or of work or of mentality or something, right? If you're not growing, everyone else around you somehow is, whether it's, by leaps and bounds or just by inches. But if you're not making those moves, you're actually going backwards. And so for me, I had to move forward. It was scary. It felt like a step backwards. I went home, right? I never had intended to do that. But figuring out what could work was, again, just don't quit, just keep going. And I think my fears kind of subsided. I don't love social media and it's not my forte. I get that. I also don't offer it to my clients. However, if it's something they need, I got some people who can help you out. But I know where my strengths aren't, and finding some of these other things that turned into be a strength really helped. And it's even in my network, you've referred me to other people 2 or 3 times now. And I think that's fantastic because I can trust your recommendation because I trust you, you
Mhm.
know? And that means a lot. So obviously if I do a good enough job, hopefully that's going to continue for everybody else as well.
The power of the network is so huge. And I think a lot of times there's sometimes a negative perspective of that, yet it's one of the most fundamental principles of all businesses across the board. Like if there's a new movie out, you find out who's seen it, right? And they recommend it or not. If there's a new restaurant, it's the same thing. And so that piece of things is really key. It's also there in terms of what not to do, right? Like, I'm not going to go see that movie because so and so, who I, appreciate their perspective, didn't like it. Okay, I don't
Right.
need to waste my time on that, right? Or
Right.
on the flip side, trying things or even talking to people about what the potentials could be doesn't mean that you're actually leaping into that, but it's allowing that conversation to guide some next steps for both people involved in that conversation. And I think that's something that I really admire about you in terms of, all of the time and the work that we've put in together. You continue to challenge yourself. You continue to challenge what you're doing in your off time, right? Like it's not just all about business, but you have these other dreams and adventures that you are honoring and able to embrace in life, that had you stayed in something that wasn't giving you that pleasure in terms of work, even though it was your career field, I don't think you'd have that same journey at this point.
Absolutely not. Not at all. I would have never met you. I mean, there's plenty of things to go along that way. And I think, right now it's the biggest thing is it wasn't either one of those places weren't allowing me to live the life that I was wanting to live. And that's, a big part of it. I think it took me, I don't know how old I was when I finally just made the decision that I'm not living to work. I'm working to live. And work
Mhm.
creates this much. It takes a couple hours out of your day. It takes like, a third of your day. And then what are you doing with the other pieces? Yeah, one of the other thirds, you're probably sleeping, but if you don't have that last piece, if you don't have the energy or the attitude around, being able to do things in your time off when you're not working or sleeping, I didn't want to. I was not it again, it was just an uncomfortable position where I just wanted to go home and like be in my bubble. And branching out from there was even hard. I didn't want to at that point. And it's one of those things, well, I'm not going to be a productive human being at that point. And that's not, to me, that's not a healthy life to live. So I did. I got out, and yes, it was scary, but you do it anyway.
And it's a ripple effect because it prompts me, who is very much a live to work kind of person. That's always been my mentality and what I was taught growing up is there is other things that you can still also fit in, that you can enjoy, that you can branch out, that you can find some fun and activity and adventure that is not just a work professional career process. And I think that is really I owe a lot of my adventure to seeing you in terms of both what you've done in your world, but also in kind of not just business, but in life. And I
Yeah.
appreciate that so much.
Well, you're so welcome because I've gotten a ton from you as well. I think you're completely right. I got to the point where when somebody would ask me, you'd get introduced and somebody'd ask you, hey, what do you do? Or, somebody ask you to tell them about yourself. The first thing I would say was my job title. And that's not at
Mm,
all who I am, but it had become such a huge part of my life that anybody who works in sports knows, you don't really have a set schedule. And my job was pretty much 24/7. And I think a lot of that was, this is what I do, and that's who I am. And that's not
mm.
it at all.
That's so powerful. I remember a colleague as I was embarking on my career in psychology who he was contemplating retirement, and some of the conversations that we had, it was very clear that his entire world identity revolved around him being a psychologist and seeing people and owning a practice. And I thought to myself, I here I am embarking on this career, but that's not the vision. And I think that's maybe a blessing at this point. That's not the vision that I had fully embraced in terms of my career path or journey, and that I saw there could always be new things and growth, and that he was struggling so much with retiring because that really had been his entire identity. And so I really appreciate your outlook in how you describe this of, that's my job, but not who I am. And
Right.
so many of us, especially I think in professional career paths, have really come through this as, what do you want to be when you grow up? Well, I'm going to be this. And that is the identity, not the person. And I think I'm reminded of a Peanuts cartoon, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And it says the happiest person on the planet, right? Like
Ridiculously happy. Absolutely.
that's the key here. And whether it's happiness or joy or, a meaningful life, whatever that is that you're striving for that to be a personal characteristic as opposed to a professional notch or award or thing, I think makes such a big difference in the journey. Even
It
if you
does.
do end up retiring from that career path that you've done entirely, you can retire and know that that's been you as that person and not.
And it can be a part of you. It doesn't have to be all of you. And
Yeah.
that's, same thing with you. I have seen it shift. And I think we've both kind of given that to each other. There are times where I know you've seen me like head down, working really hard because of whatever was going on or whatever we were doing. But it was also, honoring like time, like, hey, we meet on our weekly calls, but you're like, I don't really have anything today. I don't really have anything today. We're in a really good spot. Let's just keep moving the train forward. And so we cancel our call to give each other time back, or to, you know, we plan it out so that we can be as efficient as possible on our call, right? And I think even now, like, it's there's a balance to it. And I always say if we truly lived a balanced life, nobody would work, because unless they really enjoyed
Absolutely.
it, right? Like,
Yeah.
my things that I enjoy are the outside pieces, what my work, what my income allows me to do. Yeah, if I really truly was honest about my balance, I wouldn't be working. I would just have an unlimited supply of money and be getting to do what I wanted. So there's a book that calls it the intentional imbalance. This is definitely
Mhm.
not a me thing. I've read this somewhere. Um, but to be intentional about that imbalance, knowing it's going to be there, and then choosing how much of my life is work and how much of my life is me and the outside of work pieces. And I think once you and I actually have talked about this before, once we figured that out, once we kind of set that into play, if I have to do it at 7 or 8 o'clock at night because I've done something else for me during the day, that's my trade-off. And I understand that. I accept that. I own that. And I give myself the flexibility to have that imbalance set how I'd like it to be.
I love that advice so much because it's really a standard, that there is intentional living. There is intentional mindset behind the work you're doing and why you're doing it. And there can be meaning in the work, but it also has meaning for you in terms of there's a fund to the fun.
Yeah,
in right?
fun, fun. I like that. That's our new saying. Fun to the fun.
I would love to hear what your newest adventures are. Give you a minute to brag on yourself as to what you have going on because it's super fun.
A few years ago, I was going to, and I did. I sold most everything I own, put some things that I didn't want to sell in storage, and I, just went off on a 6 month adventure. Saw a lot of South America and really just kind of worked. Again, I work remotely, so why not take advantage of that? And it was probably one of the best things I ever did. I've always wanted to travel. I've always wanted to see other parts of the world, the culture, the people, the food. And that was the first stepping stone of that. So when I came back, trying to figure out what else I was going to do, because there's plenty of parts of the US that I haven't seen. And I decided I was going to buy an RV. And so I am now living in an RV, traveling the US. I finally saw the Grand Canyon. It is amazing. It is huge. It is a hole in the ground, but it's really impressive. So it's things like that that I want to keep happening, right? So again, my intention is to see as much as possible before I, slide in home. For right now, the RV, it's a choice. It is a very different lifestyle. It's very minimal compared to a lot of other things, but I also really love it because I can choose where I want to be and when. I do love the beach and I love the sun, and I kind of like to stay that direction. Well, I get to choose where I want to be and when, and visit clients or friends or anything like that along the way.
It is the epitome of intentional lifestyle. And not only because you get to choose all those things, but the environment contains you to the things that are most meaningful and most needed in terms of that day to day, how you do your office on the road. And I am so impressed because it's not just that you are in an RV, but it's that your office and you are in an RV and that you
Yes,
can take that wherever you want to go.
we are actually recording from the RV. The RV's name is Tallulah. So, Tallulah gets to go everywhere I can think of, and I have learned so much, again, pushing my boundaries on what I know. I didn't know how to fix my hot water heater that wasn't working, and things like that. So I ask people who do, and I have learned so many different things about just being an RV owner that I never would have thought I needed to know, but it comes in necessary. So you kind of expand yourself a little bit differently there. But yes, it is all encompassing. It is home, it is the car, it is work. It's just all right here.
And adventure.
Absolutely an adventure. Sometimes scarier one than others, but I keep getting
As
through it. So
we're as we're wrapping up, I wonder if there's anything you'd like to share, maybe a blessing or a piece of advice you've learned along the way that folks could take with them into their day today.
I think I've said a few on here, but I think the one that keeps coming back is that you have to keep going. It doesn't matter what you're doing now. What matters is that you keep moving through it. I I got to the point where, for me, one of the phrases I've always said is everything worth anything in life is a trade-off. And I'm making
Mm,
trade-offs now, but I look back at the trade-offs I was making and that wasn't sustaining me. If you want something badly enough, you're going to have to give up something else to have what you want, and then own that choice. That's that's the hardest part for some people. You are making a life full of choices, and if you don't own those and acknowledge some of them may not have been the greatest, but they may have taught you lessons along the way. I wouldn't trade some of the jobs I took along the way because I wouldn't be where I am now. I look back and I can be grateful for what they taught me without having to keep that idea around. I think that's also, just something that if you don't try to branch out, the answer is always no. If you never ask, you're never better off than what you are now.
mm,
So give it a shot, or ask the question, or, if they say no, okay, well, you're right where you were. But if they say yes, or if, a client says yes, or if you say yes to an opportunity or an adventure, you're getting something else out of it. I think it's also, something, I'm very, very faith based. And for me, it's about feeding that faith and starving the distractions along the way.
mm, so powerful. And I think part of what I see with your journey is how you help others to move yourself forward, and that you keep moving forward because there continues to be that heart of service and that zest for growth and new adventure. And it's such a powerful connection, especially for faith and
Yes.
knowing that you can be the one to do that.
Well, and that's kind of like our whole relationship, Marco. We both said yes, and we just kind of figure it out as we go along. You don't have to know. I know you always tell people take the first step. It can be messy. It can be, not fully developed. But if you say yes at like 80%, you're going to be better off than saying no until you get to feel like you're 100, because you're never going to be 100%. So that's
Yeah.
something from you that I know I have, because I have very much perfectionist tendencies. But to say yes before I'm completely ready, I mean, it did take me 2 years to say yes to this podcast, but I finally did, like, hey, here I am. But also, you just figure it out as you go along, right? We have done a lot of figuring it out, one step, one piece, one
And that
podcast at a time.
truly is the best part of the adventure, is figuring it out as we go along. So I want to thank you so much for finally saying yes, as I know there is so much goodness in this episode. You know, I close every episode with a quote, and I was searching for a couple today, and well, I always search for one, but two jumped off the page. The first one is from Les Brown, and it says, "Help others achieve their dream, and you will achieve yours." And in a similar kind of perspective, a quote from Robert Ingersoll, "We rise by lifting others."
Yeah.
And I think that really sums up so much of the things that we talked about today, but also the journey that we're both on, in
Yeah.
helping others, in giving out, and sharing light. And thank you so much for being a part of this journey with me.
Always. Thank you.
Hey, thanks for spending time with us on the Inspired Hive podcast today. Don't forget to follow us on social media at Inspired Hive Podcast, and make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss out on what's coming up next. Can't wait to have you back, and as always, live inspired.